Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal podcast for Geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about the things we all love. I put that to memory this time, Andrew. My guest today is Kirsten Zirngibl. I screwed up your
Zirngibl.
last. Oh, I got it right.
Yeah.
Go me. And my
Yeah.
co-host Andrew Sides. How you guys doing for the late
Good.
night, last minute Friday call? I think I put her through the ringer today because I was like last minute. I was like, hey, can you get on the show? Anyone
It's
who's
all good.
watching, I know we were supposed to have Eric Wilkerson on, but he has a publicist now who's very specific about where he interviews. So I have to excuse him and can't argue that. You got to follow the rules in that scenario. So we got Kirsten, and you were supposed to be on Sunday, so I appreciate you pushing it 2 days forward because
Yeah.
I'm getting my 4th booster tomorrow, and in my head I was like, I'm probably gonna be out of it on Sunday because last time 4th booster, my 2nd booster, my 4th shot.
Okay, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
whoa.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you could get a second booster, actually.
So if you're immunocompromised, they put you on a specific list, and then I get it. I think I'm only getting it like a couple months before you guys can, if you want to.
I
Oh,
I
interesting.
needed to look into that. I didn't even hear about that.
Some people don't want to do it. I get it. But I was just like, I got like 7 shows coming up, so I'm just like, I want to be
Yeah.
as force fielded up as possible, you know.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Kirsten and her artwork first, if that's cool.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember where I met you the first time, and I keep thinking San Diego Comic Con because I know you come visit the Lemons at their table all the time. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's where you and I became friends. I feel like you were hanging out there, and I vividly remember looking through your sketchbook and looking at your thumbnails, thinking these are the smallest thumbnails I've ever seen. Like
Literal
dude, her
thumbnails.
thumbnails are literally like thumbnail
Oh
size,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
I was like,
it's
wow.
yeah, it's a great time saver, and it came from wanting to be very portable because I'll fill the cracks of my life with sketches, and so, but you want to have a certain number of sketches per page so you can compare compositions. So shrinking them down is a logical conclusion, and then plus it's like
They're literally like
it's literally physics. It's faster to travel your pen less distance. So if you can say what you want to say smaller, it's more efficient. So yeah.
And that's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess my my conundrum with that is I couldn't. You could see all the details, obviously, in your thumbnails. I would be. My mind was boggled by that, but at the same time, I was like, this that kind of taught me like, don't overthink the thumbnail, right? You kind of have what you want right there, and then it's in your head already. You know, I was always taught to really go into details of the thumbnail. So then when I go to piece, I just bring the thumbnail in, I can rock and roll. But that doesn't work for me. So if I thumbnail.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about going back to paper. I went to I went to the iPad, and there are many great things about it, and I do use it for like professional concepting. But for that really rough work, I want to go back to paper because the temptation to erase is just too great, and I found I'm just slower when I do it digital.
I was gonna say, like, do you feel that you think differently when you're sketching on paper versus iPad? Because like I've noticed that with myself. If I ever have to like figure out any kind of rough stuff on Photoshop or Procreate or whatever, I always do feel like I'm more like scatterbrained or like more hectic versus whenever I have like my paper sketchbook and a pencil, like I'm very like at ease. Like I can kind of really think and plot out things as I'm going. But I'm not moving any slower. It's just everything's more direct, methodical, like actually not as many wheels spinning with it.
Yeah, yeah, I do find that to some degree as well. I think a healthy balance is good.
Yeah.
I guess I'm used to being digital all the time, so that's where. But I like using a pen and a pad because it's portable. It's easier. You can just put it in your back pocket and walk away versus your iPad, which is portable, but you know, not as easy, I guess.
Yeah, for clients though, it is really nice to have the iPad because you can very quickly color your stuff. As I've done, I just released a bunch of very rough work that I did all the way back in 2016 on my site, and a lot of it's just pencil on paper. And I just remember it took a lot of time just to scan that stuff in and have to move it
Yeah.
around for presentation. And it's really nice to be able to cut that part out now. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
guess it helps
Yeah,
avoid that
that's
extra step when you need speed.
yeah,
yeah, that's the only
totally.
like strong point of digital for sure. Yeah.
Um, we can talk about more of your. I know you've done stuff for Magic. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Actually, yeah. Well, Kirsten, I'm kind of curious. Like, it's been a while since like we've talked. Like, what have you been up to since like I've last seen you? Which
Oh,
that was goodness. That was like maybe like 2018. I want to say was maybe the last time I
Was it
saw
at
you.
Spectrum?
it was the last LuxCon, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
it was a
haven't been to
LuxCon.
the last Spectrum. I've been up to a bunch of things. So I let's see, freelance. So I could talk about Magic. I still do Magic cards. I don't do them super often, but I do like to keep my foot in that pool.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I've worked as
I
a concept
remember.
artist doing world building for Magic as well. Concept
Nice.
pushes, which is very fun. They have a sci-fi set coming out quite soon actually. It's called the Unfinity, which is a super fun project. It's like retro space sci-fi stuff. And
Oh,
so
nice.
That sounds
yeah,
fun.
I have a piece from that on my website. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of personal stuff lately. In 2019, I did a ton of like physical events, selling work, mostly like Magic GPs. And that was a great experience.
Was 2019 the year you did that mural, or what year is that?
Which mural? I did multiple murals.
Oh
Uh,
God, I'm trying to think now. I just remember distinctly, like I kind of asked you about it like briefly online, and you said like you had to basically break it up into chunks. But I have a feeling that's every mural you have to work with.
Yeah, man.
they're definitely meant to be consumed in small like they're up close and in chunks, you know, like
Yeah,
you're supposed to kind of journey through them. And I really like that in art. It's just very bad for sharing online, because
Sure.
online it's all about the thumbnail. You want to boom instant read that, and when you have a
yeah.
big wide thing with lots of, it's not meant to be seen on a phone, you know. It's this little image. But yeah, no, the murals were a little earlier. 2016 to 2018 was kind of my mural phase, where I was putting them at
Oh,
Burning Man
okay.
and other festivals. I have two of the big 30-foot ones at the South Bend Museum of Art's permanent collection, which is super cool. I'm glad
That's
they have
That's
cool.
awesome.
a home now. Yeah. That yeah, I was really happy that they bought those. And so but yeah, I haven't, you know, COVID happened. I might have done more murals, but most of the places that commission those are like music festivals, places where you actually have the space or something like that, like putting them
Right.
around sound stages. And when that stuff's not going on, I kind of had actually been pivoting though, like rather than doing so much travel and selling prints and all that, I had been doing my game project, my first game project. So I've always had this strong desire to like have my art be seen by the end user. Like I love concept art. I love thinking. I love world building. It's like it's what makes my soul sing. But the thing is that like there's something about the fact that some part of it gets lost in translation before people actually see it. And so making my own games, it really it allows me to speak more directly to people. And
Mhm.
the idea of being able to like go inside my works, it's like ever since I started making art, I wished I could dive in. And so the first project was called Intopolis, and it was a VR hidden object game. VR compatible, didn't have to be in VR. It
Okay.
was actually a lot less. It had a similar navigation style to Myst 3. It was like you're inside of a sphere. The sphere has been mapped with these worlds, and you're jumping around different parts of the city looking for patterns and looking for
Mhm.
specific things that have something in common. So it's not like a hidden object game where they would give you a specific thing to look for. Is you'd have to start looking for commonalities, like, hey,
Episode
I've seen
Panakal
something that looks like that before. Like, what's in
talking
common
about the
about
things
that?
we all.
What about its symmetry? What about its pattern is similar? And then once you see that, you find all the ones that are like that. They were called sets. And you were playing a far future art historian who was diving back into these archives and trying to piece certain things together. And it was called The Last Museum. It had a lot of lore. And I kind of petered out on it. The tech was not the problem. It's a pretty easy game to make. A hidden object game is like, if you're an artist, especially if you have a very complex style like me, the natural thing you'll want to do is a hidden object game.
Yeah.
And
Right.
right, yeah. The problem with that was that I couldn't trust how fun it was because I don't play hidden object games. I didn't grow up with them. I hadn't, and the thing is, it's a huge part of making a game that I'm not sure everybody appreciates when they go into it. Is you'd better enjoy playing that type of game because you'll be
Yeah.
playing it a lot.
Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
can't trust,
Over and over and over again.
yeah, and when you can't trust if you think it's fun or not, like that's pretty scary because you're investing a huge amount of time and resources into like making something that, like, it's something I still want to make.
Did,
I had some. There's some. I'm kind of waiting for the software to improve a bit in how in the Intopolis. So I considered a shelved project, but I've moved on to a project that I do trust to be fun. And that is a racing game. Because I grew up, I loved racing games. They're like super 3D. I love thinking in 3D. I'm very comfortable in it. I feel very comfortable when going really fast through a bunch of stuff. There's just something about it that I like, and I trust what's fun and what's not in a racing game. So,
It
um,
looks fun, to be honest.
I posted a link to anyone watching. I posted a link in all the threads, so you should see it.
oh, cool.
I actually have a question. How hard has it been to like convert your style and look to something that's manageable for like game frame rates and that kind of thing? Like to be able to like render this kind of complex geometry in real time for a game. Has it been difficult, or has it been like, yeah, okay, you had your usual whatever tricks you've had to use in the past? Like, have you been able to use more of them, or like did you have to figure out a whole different working method to get your same
Yeah. Did
kind
you
of
have to
look?
change your whole environment? I guess is a good question.
Yeah.
Yes, about that. Yes. Very good question because yeah, it's funny. One of the things that had kept me out of when I was working at Intopolis, that was pre-rendering. So that was the way I was getting out of it. Is I was rendering
Right.
a sphere. It was a 360 camera, which in terms of like production, that was the smartest way to go.
Right. And
And then
like that's how they did it for Myst as well. So yeah, it makes sense.
for this game, I've made it hard because here's the problem: it's a multiplayer game, specifically online multiplayer, which adds a whole other spectrum of technical challenges. And luckily, I'm not doing this alone. I have a team now, which is
Nice.
great.
Nice.
And yeah, and so there are some terms like that. Like right now, they're tackling like client side simulation, and we're trying to get like the physics to work with specifically with the server. And it's great because I can know just enough about that to make the big decisions, but I don't actually have to do it, which frees me up to do the art, as there's a lot of
Yeah.
art. So here's the to answer your question about how to get all the intricate stuff into the game is it's a multi-pronged way. Number one, I'm learning Houdini. I've just started, and it's going to take
Oh
a
yeah.
long time. I have
I have
wanted to
no
learn
idea what Houdini is.
Houdini's kind of like, you could argue it's like one of the next stages for 3D modeling, Alan.
Okay.
Instead of like, like currently, like right now, how we do like your spaceships,
Yeah.
how we're having to actually model things out, wherever. Houdini, and this is also like what Blender's geometry nodes is like too. It's a node-based thing. So basically, you plug in different nodes, and those dictate what the model will look like,
Okay.
and how it gets displayed.
Yeah,
It's
it's all node based, and it's what they call procedural modeling. So it's sort of like in
Okay.
between programming and art. It's like
yeah,
you aren't moving vertices around with your mouse. You're telling you're spawning vertices based on commands that you're giving, and it's sort of like a flow chart, or almost like a circuit. Is you have inputs and you have outputs and you have functions, and so you can have a twist function that twists all of the vertices on your mesh, and then you take the output of that and you can move it into a bend function or a symmetry function or something, and then anywhere in the chain. You can go up the chain and change something, and that change propagates down the chain. So you never have to change your work. The reason why this is relevant is that you can plug Houdini into Unreal Engine, which is what I'm using
Oh,
for the game,
cool.
and you can expose parameters in Unreal. So if I wanted to have a fence that's a very complex looking fence, I can change the shape of the fence in Unreal, and because of Houdini, it propagates and updates. So I can have lots of complex repeated things that do not take up memory on disk, and
Right.
are much easier. They're all instance, so it's a lot easier to compile. So Houdini's
That's
number one.
cool.
That is going to take months to learn, like just to do something basic. It's like learning a programming language. So that's my long term. Number two, that the one that I've been very excited about. I've been working on this for a while now, just personal R&D, is point clouds. So point clouds are,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they're used in LiDAR. They're used in like 3D scanning. They're like, imagine geometry, but without polygons, just the vertices.
Oh,
There
that's
is
interesting.
no normal data. So what it means is they're a lot more lightweight than meshes. And I have a nifty way of using 3ds Max converting some of my very heavy assets into point clouds. But they look like a garnish. They don't fully, like, I did a whole test track with like all point clouds, and you can actually see it if you go on my website and you click on let's see, if you go on that link that was posted, zirngworks.com/chroma circuit.
Hmm.
If you scroll down, you'll see a link to a gallery, and in that gallery uh, you can click on the little pluses and look at the full size thing. You can see what they look like in the viewport. Um, and so they can cast shadows, which is very cool. So that is one prong, and then I have another thing that I'm calling plane mapping, which is taking just planes of geometry and putting translucent maps on them, and like
Okay, like
having
doing
the map.
alphas of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're using it. Yeah, you're right. You're using opacity maps, not translucency maps, because translucency is expensive.
Yeah.
And so
God, yeah.
yeah, yeah, multiple layers of I have broken renders before with like by trying this translucency. So that's something that for things like foliage, or foliage-like things. So the world is called Synthara, and it is like, imagine like 100% synthetic biome. Like the entire surface of the world are these microbots, and they're like these little modular uh things that, each one has maybe the intelligence of an ant, but together they can form much more complex thoughts and functions. And so the world, I'm representing a lot of these microbots with the point clouds. And so yeah, you're racing through it. I call it digital
Man.
pointillism, and what happens is your brain kind of mixes all of those points together, like as you're zooming by it. So I'm very happy with how it looks overall, but there's just a ton of performance stuff to figure out. Like, what that question you asked is one of the reasons I haven't posted a lot of new art lately. Is that like there is a lot of groundwork that has to be like put into, like, built up
Yeah.
here. So
Like a lot of R&D to get it to work.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what's like your, I guess, like, what would you say is your top frame rate right now? Or just like through your testing and stuff, like what's the best that you've achieved so far?
60 frames a second, but
Wow.
but
Okay.
things flicker in and out, because
Oh.
I have Unreal doing this thing where each item, it's trying to maximize, it's trying to minimize. As soon as it sees the frame rate might go down, it'll remove points, but the problem is that it does it in batch. And so
Oh.
one of my coders is I've set them on a task. They haven't gotten to it yet, but soon we want to figure out how to lerp. I don't know how technical I should get here because
I
it
mean,
is
it's
more of an
all.
art stream.
I know half the
know
stuff
what
you're saying, and the other half I have to like. That's why I'm like
I know
Andrew
what
does a lot
lerping
of 3D
is.
work. That's why he's asking all the hard questions right now.
I know what lerping is, but only in as much as I know it to be like, okay, I can use this to blend materials. I don't know exactly what it means or what actually is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. It basically just means linear interpolation. And so it means that, you
Oh,
have a value here
okay.
and you have a value here. And you
Hmm.
just, if you were to normalize it between 0 and 1, then in the middle it would be 0.5. And
Gotcha.
so what I want to do is have it where depending on the camera distance, you're showing more points or less points. So rather than seeing chunks come in and out based on whether there's too many in the scene at that one time, you're going to see a more gradual display where the ones in the back you're not seeing as many of, and you're seeing all the ones you want to see in the front. So that's,
Oh,
Oh, that's
okay.
neat.
They
yeah,
had they had very similar kind of tech on the first Horizon Zero Dawn, if I remember right. Like there was basically the camera had a very strict culling operation going on. So like if it was literally outside of the field of view, the game did not consider it. It did not exist as far as the game was concerned.
hmm
And
So,
it just made sure that real time as you moved or whatever, it would make sure
so
that everything
are
popped
things
in.
actually like building really that quickly in front of you? Is that what you're saying? Like
Yeah.
yeah,
as
Yeah.
your camera view goes to it, that's
yeah,
cool.
Mhm.
yeah. But as soon as it sees that the camera's close, it's like starts loading it.
Hmm.
Um, so
That sounds
yeah,
like it's crunching some heavy math.
it
It's actually isn't it fairly performance like it's not as performance intensive as having everything out and about, isn't it?
It's okay, so it's pretty here's the thing, the point clouds are just less performance intensive in general because you don't actually have to worry about like reflection or like calculating um like how there's a surface normal on geometry
Hmm.
that's like basically its angle. There is no surface normal with point clouds. So that takes away a lot of like, the intensity of the performance. Um the other thing that you can do is billboarding. So you can pre-render an object and you can have it face the camera, and that will be kind of the more distant objects. So if you have towers and stuff in the back, another
That's
trick.
like Alan, if you remember, like, did you ever play Mario Kart on 64?
Come on.
I'm just making sure. Some
Yeah.
people you never know. Some
What's
people are
Mario
crazy.
Kart?
Some
Yes.
people are crazy. Anyway, yeah, like do you remember like the items or like the trees in that? They would
Yeah.
always face you no matter what. That's what billboarding is.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
cool.
that's yeah. So there's a bunch of it's not an easy answer, and I'm still figuring this out. Like a lot of this is like
I
really
feel
new
like
to me.
you've locked down on a lot of things that I would not even thought about when I was designing the
It's
game for starters.
it's been a lot. I sometimes I wonder if it's worth the trade-off of not making a bunch of new paintings. But
It's
like
gonna be awesome when you are you planning on putting it out on like a Steam or like
yes.
three. I assume you're gonna have a VR version of it or
VR is tricky because it can be
okay.
barfy. And if I
Uh-huh.
don't really optimize it and I don't do all the camera stuff all the
Yo,
right way, it could not be
gotcha.
good.
Okay,
Would
no
that be
worries.
like a down the line, like pipe dream kind of thing where it's like, hey, this is coming really good. Now we can kind of focus on this kind
Oh
of
yeah.
thing?
Oh, I have tons of
Yeah.
ideas for so Steam is the main thing that I'm releasing on first. I do not have a Kickstarter planned, although it's not off the table. Kickstarters are not as useful for game projects as they used to be. There was a golden age of game Kickstarters that was several years ago, and it's dried up
Yeah.
a bit. People got burned by projects that didn't follow through. Um, so it is something that I'm going to use if the demo and early access aren't pulling in the numbers that I'm hoping for the final. I have this multi-tier release schedule, and so the first is the demo, and the demos I'm going to play test it on people who I don't know and really look for the spark in them. So and make sure that like see what kind of buzz I can get at game festivals with it, grants, that kind of thing. The next, and so that'll go on Steam and Itch, and so Itch is it's kind of the indie game
Yeah.
platform, and then Steam has been great. Steam has kind of replaced Kickstarters to some degree because of early access. You're basically
Hmm.
telling people, here's an unfinished version of my game. If you believe in it, you can pay me now. And so then it's a really good indicator in the same way of Kickstarter of like how much of a following do you actually have. And because if you're starting to make money before the game is coming out, you have a much better idea of like whether the game will make money.
Right.
And it is definitely an if. It is very scary because I don't have a big social media following. And so,
Really?
there's open development, which is one of the like marketing ideas for indie games. It's just like when you're making concept art or whatever, stream it. Post everything. Post your Kanbans, your project management schedules. Post everything because that's content, and you keep people engaged. You can get input from the community rather than like locking everything up. And so my hope is like to do that, and yeah, it's still scary though.
I'm definitely gonna, once it comes out on early access, I'm gonna grab it because this is definitely like
Yeah,
a
I
game that's
definitely want
right
to
up my
play it,
alley
man.
for a racing game.
Like I feel like there's such a hole in the market for this because like I went on Steam because I wanted a racing game, and I couldn't find anything that was like quite my vibe. It seems like usually either you have like like modern, really realistic games, the
Yeah.
Forzas, or you have the gritty cyberpunk racer kind of thing, or you have maybe occasionally a very small game that's like your retro wave, like chill out racer. And then it's either that or it's like super kidsy, super cute, super like, but very much it feels like it's marketed to kids, but adults are welcome. And I
Like a
want mine
Mario
to
Kart
be,
kind of thing. Yeah.
Like Mario Kart,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I want mine to be the opposite. It's like I want it to be like it's for adults, but kids are welcome. It's a subtle difference. But I want it to be fun and light, like more of a party game where multiplayer is important. But I also wanted to have like lore and like a hub world, a little bit more story. The very first console game I ever played was called Diddy Kong Racing, and they had a story in that game where they had a
Yeah.
hub world. You had a
Kitty
real
Kong.
world that
Yeah.
connected the tracks. It
I
wasn't just
remember
a
that. Yeah.
UI. Yeah, and so I have a hub world that's a little bit like that. And it takes place in like the super distant future in a very, very like strange kind of world. And so I'm not even finding the right tags for it on Steam. Like they don't have kart racer as a tag. I'm like
Yeah.
I looked.
Maybe you can. I mean, I have.
Al,
We,
this is like a Twitch.
this is the same thing that happens to us when we're trying to stream on Twitch because you can't find hashtags for basic things. Like we did a episode on horror movies, and horror doesn't exist. So like, what? But like it has stuff like nail painting or something, and you're like, why is that a hashtag? So like,
Are we in a bubble?
I
Like
don't know. It's like
I
nobody
asked myself.
cares. But like Steam, we've got. Do you know Wade? He always hangs around Ron and Vanessa's booth too. We might be able to talk to him and be like, hey man, why doesn't Steam? He works for Valve actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I would love to talk to Valve. I have actually been to I've toured their studio before, which is very cool, and I know one of the art directors there, but I want to figure out how to ask for like because that's a huge part of how people discover your game, and it's like
I mean, I'll see if he's got time to talk to you. I'll connect you.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I actually messaged him earlier because I was trying to see if he can give me any deals on a Steam Deck.
Oh yeah, I definitely want this game. So I would love to get. So one of my goals, and I've been talking with my developers about this, is doing a Linux port. Is here's the cool thing about making a game for Linux is that even though it's small and the investment may not seem worth however many sales you make, the Linux community is really good about bug reporting. They know they like when they see something, they will actually like write what they did to make it crash. And it's like QA is a really important part about making a game, and it's something that a lot of
Yeah.
indies going into it. And I didn't know how big it was when I got into this, but like that's a big part of your development, like time and cost. And so if you've got like smart computery people doing some of this like
I
for
mean, as
you,
long as they're all like under NDA, I assume, right? And they're testing your stuff for you.
oh no,
Well,
it's just
it would
like
be
it's
early
more like when
access,
it's
wouldn't it?
Early access. Yeah, got
yeah.
it. Yeah, because then they can be like, I got to this level and it broke. And you're like,
Yeah, right. Or
thanks.
like, here's what I was doing when it broke. And there's a lot of goodwill. Like they're just so happy that someone made something for Linux that they're like willing to like give you some extra.
I mean, I got a
like,
friend who
time.
loves everything he does. He's always like, oh, I did this in Linux. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I never like, I only briefly touched Linux back in the day. I wish I had learned it more because I feel like it's clean versus Windows, just bogged down.
Yeah. My problem is like there's certain software that just will not, like 3ds Max does not
Right.
run on Linux, and so I'm kind of
Yeah.
trapped.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
know if there
Adobe
is.
was
I
was
don't
a
even
problem
think
I had.
ZBrush runs on Linux, does it?
It's spotty. I know I think Houdini does. I don't know about ZBrush.
Okay. Yeah, because I was gonna say I don't know of any like 3D programs that do run on Linux or that do run on Linux at all. Maybe Blender, I think, has a Linux
I'm sure Blender
port. I'm not
does.
sure.
I feel like when you're talking about your game, the first game that came to my head, speaking of racing, so I used to really love F-Zero,
Oh
which
yeah.
Mhm.
not the like you mentioned, like you either get that realistic like Forza, like my friends and I used to always play. I don't even remember what it's called, where you like build a tricked out cars like the Honda Civics with the turbos and stuff, and then you'd race.
Need for Speed?
Not Need for Speed. It was more like it had like cell shading.
Was it open world?
I'm trying to remember what it was called. The cars didn't have like the highly rendered looking cars. They had like the cell shading, like so like
Okay, then it
it,
wasn't the one I'm
it
thinking.
looked
Yeah.
very much like almost like a comic strip. And that game was fun, except you were racing real cars. But F-Zero was always one of my favorite games because you had these like futuristic looking ships that you're like basically the hovering spaceships that you're racing, right? Not the wildest looking game in the world, but I still enjoyed it. I think it was on Nintendo 64 that I had it on.
Yep. There's
So.
also Pod Racer, Star Wars Pod
Oh
Racer.
yeah, that game is crazy fast, man.
That was brutal.
You ever played in the arcade with the two joysticks, like the two handles? Oh my lord,
it's insane.
There's a place here called GameWorks. You have to like fine tune the turns and stuff, and it's wild but fun, obviously.
Yeah,
they used to have one over here. It was like maddening to try and learn.
It's like they didn't want kids winning.
Just teach them about life.
Yeah, this is what you do. You put money in, and we just take it all. I was gonna say if you also mentioned you wanted to talk about metaverse stuff.
Yeah.
And at first I thought you were talking about Facebook, and I'm glad you said you're not.
No. No.
Does it tie into the idea for the game, or is this completely?
It does because I am thinking about like long term. It's like I'm putting a ton of like time and resources into making this, and there's a ton of factors that can affect sales too. I want to put it out as many platforms as possible, and I am trying to think long term. It's like now that I have a working thing in Unreal, that like eventually there's going to be a metaverse that's using Unreal Engine. I've been, Epic Games seems to they just put another billion into developing their metaverse, and you could already argue that like Fortnite is a type of a metaverse. And so basically my thought is, by learning to make lightweight assets, as much as it goes against like my whole throw polygons at things approach to making my illustrations, if I want to, I really love the idea of virtual worlds, and so I would like to participate when the time and the platform is right, and so I hope to be able to port some of these things, even if just the individual props, into into another world. And it's kind of like I'm making Legos now, but I can reassemble them to something new when the time comes out. But yeah, I've been bombarded by clients who want metaverse stuff, like kind of like blue sky concept things. It's very fun stuff, but it's forced me to really think about like, what do I want to see in a platform like this? Because if I don't want something that's an economy simulator that breaks the magic circle. And are you guys familiar with the concept of the magic circle?
No, like I think I've heard it in passing, but I'm not terribly familiar.
Yeah, it's just just super rough concept, but it's the idea of like the ability to suspend disbelief because the system you're in is self-contained.
Okay.
And as soon as you bring in like aspects of the real world, it becomes much more difficult to actually like feel like you're escaping. And that's kind of the problem with the metaverse, is a lot of people see it as this thing where they can escape. And it's true, you can escape by playing with your identity. So it's sort of like a self-escape. But in terms of a world escape, if you're bringing in cryptocurrency, for example, and you know that every time you spend something in that game, you're actually spending some real world money. You've just broken the magic circle.
Okay.
And
Okay, so
so
yeah, like breaking immersion.
right. And so the question is like, how do you make a platform that is fair, is fair to gamers, and such that the time you put in and the skill you put in is rewarded equitably without bringing in real world wealth. So that's a big question. And aside from cosmetics, no, I kind of think that that's like a cursed problem. And a curse problem, basically, what I mean by that is it's sort of like it's self-contradictory promises to players. It's like a paradox of design. It's like how do you reconcile both of those things?
Yeah.
And so I think that like a lot of companies are wrestling with that right now. And so I'm finding myself reading, when I read the white papers and a client comes to me, I see these types of models, and they haven't all, like, nobody I've seen has like figured this out yet. And so it's been on my mind.
What kind of alternatives have been presented? Because, like, at least for me, like, I've only ever seen kind of the bad parts of it coming from games. Like what you said, like cosmetics, where that can create a sense within community of like the haves and have-nots. Where if you
Hmm.
see someone that has the cosmetic items, it's like, oh, they can afford it, they spent the money on it, versus you, where you're like, well, I didn't spend the money, and then people actually get ostracized as a result. Like you have kids that within their cliques within school, like they form outside that clique because people will say like, oh, that person can't afford like cosmetic items or whatever.
Well,
Or
yeah.
even something like say like Roblox, where they have their whole like currency system, but it's that weird persnickety kind of thing where it's like $1 equals like 800 points,
I think
but
it's
like
100
to
Robux or
oh, okay,
something.
like
Yeah.
100, yeah. But I
Eh,
remember like it's all basically made to obfuscate the fact that you're spending money on the thing.
Right.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that eventually clearly there are a lot of people in the finance industry who love gaming, who love trading, who love thinking about economic problems, and they really want a sandbox to play in. And we've seen them playing in a bunch of sandboxes lately with like the latest crypto surge and everything.
Right.
And I think if you were to create a game that was about being some cyberpunk near future trader who's just trying to get as rich as possible, um, then you have ludonarrative resonance. Ludonarrative dissonance is a common term in game design, meaning that the structure of the game and what you're doing in the game does not match the narrative framing of the game. And so if you're in a high fantasy world where you're like slashing things with swords, but it's run on crypto and you're doing a bunch of trading, when you go to town, you're trading, like that's ludonarrative dissonance. It's like, it doesn't, the what you're doing and what you're supposed to feel like you are in conflict.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that, if like, if a game producer really saw like who is the market of people who really want this stuff, and then make a narrative frame to fit that, I think they will do well, and people will have fun with that. Um, but yeah, the question is, how much will this permeate regular gaming? Because there's a lot of vitriol against this model from traditional gamers who just want to go on Steam and buy a game and be able to play it forever with the $10 they spent, and not have to
Right.
worry about, like you were talking about, social hierarchies. And because you're absolutely right, cosmetic items, yes, they're cosmetic, but there's a bunch of, humans are status seeking creatures, and you're going to have, if you have guilds in the game, you might have a guild where it's nearly full, and it's kind of borderline whether or not they're going to bring you in, but if they see you've got this really great item, they might let you in the guild. And then once you're in the guild, you get advantages in play, how you play, you get better people to
Yeah.
play with. And it's like, it's really hard. It's sort of like when you're mixing paint and you have like, like cerulean, like Prussian blue. What's that blue that's like just super potent? I
Phthalo blue.
Yeah, yeah, phthalo blue, and you've got titanium white and phthalo blue, and it just takes a tiny bit of phthalo blue to completely turn your color blue, because
Right.
and that's sort of what, like, these. play to earn models are like, but at the same time, like I feel like there are ways to design kindness into the games, and there's also ways to maybe reward content creators without letting the players actually participate in play to earn. For example, a Spotify type model, and this is something I've actually been pushing for with a very early phase. Um, someone who's into this, they and this is a thing you can do. Is you have a pool, people pay a subscription fee. You know that the subscription goes
Mhm.
into a pool, and then that gets distributed to content creators based on how much their content is consumed. So in the same way a Spotify artist gets paid based on how many times their songs are played, it's like they're being paid like less than a cent per song. But then that's sort of a way of keeping the player side, just keeping the magic circle largely intact while still allowing content creators to get compensated. Because that's kind of a problem with the metaverse right now, is that like it takes a lot of work to make an interactive 3D experience, like a lot, believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have had friends who have told me, oh, you should make a world for this, like VR chat or this or that, and it's like the amount I have to learn to put all that in, and then there's just not enough, like I'd have to put a lot into advertising just to get anybody to see it, because they don't have good tools for having people find your world. So it's like I think there's a ton of people who would love to participate in some metaverse type thing, but they can't, like, there has to be some way that you can monetize that. Like I get it, um
Has
so
anyone like proposed any theoretical ideas in terms of like maybe not like so much of a hyper capitalistic approach, like more like a like kind of more like a co-op kind of thing, or something that's more equitable towards a lot of gamers, where everyone kind of feels like the playing field is fair to them. Like the closest I can think of is like Minecraft, in terms of like people basically coming together, like do these massive projects, and it's like no one real person owns it. It's all just a massive project. But that also is not really monetized, that works within our current system.
yeah,
That's just kind of people just coming together.
yeah, that's true. I haven't actually played Minecraft. I could see it being very fun, and I loved Lego as a kid and stuff. So like I could see
Yeah.
myself liking it. So I can't speak on Minecraft. Um, I mean, there are games that have policed, World of Warcraft and just a lot of the traditional MMOs. They they very much try to police gold trading, or like off market.
Oh,
You make a
right.
bunch of
Yeah.
gold and then sell it. And one of the reasons they do that is because the conversion rate is so low. It's so low. It's like if it takes somebody who has, let's say an American who has a job that's paying them $20 an hour, and it takes them 5 hours to get a certain amount of gold, and they can buy that same amount of gold for $1. And they go, wait, that's 5 hours of work. I just spent $100 of my time, or I could just buy the gold from somebody for $1. Like then all of a sudden
Right.
it starts to devalue the whole game experience. And I think that when you propose something that doesn't have any kind of like transactions in it, you are going to have a black market no matter what. I would think if it's a
Yeah.
you're going to have a market of people who don't want to spend the time but still want to have the status within the game,
Yeah. Right.
and the fun gameplay. And so it's a difficult problem. It's like we won't talk about politics, but it's like politics in that it's very messy, because humans are messy, and the dynamics between many humans together is even more messy. And so the solution to make everybody happy is going to be messy and inconsistent, and it's not going to make everybody happy.
Right.
You're I think you have within gamer uh, culture, you have people who are like, more communicate communitarian, or people who are more like libertarian, and they all have different ideas of how the game should be structured. So yeah,
I mean, what
it's
you're
tough.
saying with the way these people, I think that problem is going to exist in any game that's designed that way. I mean, like if you have like you mentioned World of Warcraft, but I play a Destiny with my friends, and even in that game, there's people who want specific guns or whatever, right? And they don't have the
Yeah.
time to grind for it or time to play like a raid or whatever, so they like have
Uh,
I don't know exactly how it works, but if I think they pay somebody to log in with their account,
Hmm.
play the game for them, get the thing for
Valve
them,
went on
and then
a whole thing like a few years back where they cracked down on was it Counter Strike? Because people were like selling gun skins, but it was this
yeah.
whole like gambling thing, or whatever. And like Valve had to step in and be like, no, 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 you're not doing any of this.
But I mean, like, I
Like
feel like any
severely
type of
restricted.
game that's designed like that, is
Yeah,
going to always have this. Like, how are you gonna lock that down, right?
Hmm.
Like you just gave a good example. Like, somebody doesn't want to spend 5 hours or like a week trying to, like, I know the stress of trying to earn a specific gun in that game. Luckily, I have friends who are like, we'll run it with you till you get it, right? And then we do it a couple times, and I eventually get it because I'm not as good as they are. But I didn't
yeah.
have to pay somebody else to do it, right?
Yeah,
The
and it
convenience is
cheapens it.
nice. It
If
does
you buy
cheapen it,
it
right?
Yeah.
with yeah, and so it's difficult. So you look at back to metaverse stuff is like there's a lot of speculation that it's going to be a place that's like it's basically a 3D internet.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
any kind, imagine you any kind of website is spatial, and part of me is excited about that idea to like I have synesthesia, and part of my synesthesia is spatial. Like I perceive when I think of certain thoughts and I think of data, I perceive it or time especially. I have something called temporal spatial synesthesia. So like I see time as space kind of. It's like I see it as shapes, and like time is like an
Mhm.
axis. And so when I think about the metaverse, I think 3D internet, I think like this could be really cool is that we can organize data. I had this project I worked on a few years ago, just a personal project called Data Garden, that was sort of like I wanted it to be sort of like a skin for your operating system, where you could have plants that are like each plant is a folder, and each branch of the folder is
Oh,
like
that's
another
cool.
folder, and the leaves are your pictures or your files, and you could have different types of plants and arrange them a certain way, and just all the stuff that's meaningful to you. It wouldn't be an efficient way to get to your data, but it'd be like it's kind of part art, part your computer
Reminds
environment.
I was gonna say it reminds me of the operating. I forget what the name of the actual operating system is, but the one in Jurassic Park that they use to go through like the mainframe and stuff.
Yeah,
It's an
probably,
actual
but
operating system though,
yeah,
Alan.
I know
Oh,
it
really?
is. It was very
Yeah.
basic back then. I'm sure it looks a lot
Oh
better
yeah.
now.
Yeah, and I mean, like the thing is though, was that everybody has a different way of thinking about like this
Oh,
kind of
someone's
thing. It's
saying
sort
that
of
was Linux in Jurassic Park.
Oh, was
oh,
it?
really?
I guess so.
Huh.
Um, so yeah, it's like on first blush, like I can get really excited thinking about virtual worlds, because it's like you have this ability to create a form of language that's like um that's spatial, and it's like so much of our brains are spatial. Like
Yeah.
we're hunter gatherers, like they need to be able to navigate the forest and remember where things are and be very aware of everything going on around them. And so it's like if you could leverage that for thinking about data, like for example, exploring the web, like that sounds amazing at first blush. But the problem is like if it's different for if every room or every page in this 3D internet has a different way of doing it, then people could get very frustrated trying to find what they're looking for. So that's one thing about it. I mean, with the 3D internet, in theory, you would have a digital store that you go into and you see all the products on shelves, and but then you have to ask yourself like, is that really more efficient than just looking at a web page?
Yeah.
It could be more fun,
It could be more
but
fun, exactly. Like, it's the experience of, like, in my head, I always thought when I think about like metaverse and stuff, I imagine like a Ready Player One type universe at some point. Not as, I mean, it would be cool if it was that elaborate, but maybe not as elaborate, right? But the experience is that's the, like, yes, I can just go on a website and order the product I want, right, and then call it a
mhm.
day. But if I can actually like transverse through like a world to a store, maybe was what is it? Ready Player One was a dystopia. I'd like to remind everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
That is true. That is true.
that's true.
Yeah, I could see it being kind of a layered design, where it's like on the top layer you're just looking at a web page, and then in the
Yeah,
next layer it opens up and it's just 3D on your desktop, and then in the next layer, if you want to go in further, it's VR. So it's not like everybody's spending all day in VR,
Right.
but only when it seems applicable to whatever task you're doing. And so, you know, I can think of examples where that could be relevant, but I mean, I
Um,
can't imagine spending all day in VR. Like, it
yeah,
I
tires
was
no,
me
gonna
I
out.
couldn't
say,
either.
yeah, and you're a heavy VR user too, aren't you, Kirsten?
I was, but I found that not anymore. I was really into making art with it, and there were certain things in it that were very useful to me. However, like for example, Nurbs.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've modeled with Nurbs. I was doing Nurbs modeling in VR, and that's awesome for that because if you've got two inputs and you can choose the angle of your inputs, you can make Nurbs curves super like so much better than you could traditionally. Or same with
Oh
splines.
wow.
Splines are a pain in the neck. Yeah, Gravity Sketch. I recommend
Yes,
Gravity
yes,
Sketch.
splines suck.
Spline suck, yeah. Imagine just being able to like just draw your spline in 3D. Like there's this one piece on my site called Corn Tree, where I did all the splines of that tree in VR, and it was so much better than if I had done it. But the problem is it just tires me out. I don't know why. I'm not getting nausea, but I just after about an hour of it, I just feel like I need to stop. And you know, maybe the hardware will get better, and I won't have that problem as much. And I enjoy
Yeah.
it, but
Do
it's
you do
definitely a
you think
supplement.
do you think it is like do you think maybe like in terms of that tiredness it's because like I know like some people talk about like eye fatigue because of like certain resolution displays within VR. Higher ones are better apparently because of like better refresh rates or just tighter density of pixels. So I think that causes some eye fatigue as well as like just seeing the individual pixels that close can apparently fuck with your vision a lot and just kind of wear
Well,
you out
Mm.
faster as a result.
you're not exactly the weird thing. I don't fully understand it, but as I understand it, your eyes are actually unfocused when you're looking at VR. You're actually
Really?
you're. It's not like
Yeah,
you're seeing
I
the
thought you're slightly off on the sides, not exactly. Um,
my understanding is that you're not perceiving that you're looking close because your eye muscles are actually not straining to make you look close at a thing. You are actually
Right.
your eye muscles are acting as if you are looking into the distance. But it's I honestly if I did a lot more VR, I would research this to make sure I'm not messing up my eyes. So I feel like
yeah,
I've been doing it in a low enough tolerance. I haven't bothered to look it up.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think I've ever played. My friend has a VR headset. I don't think I've ever played it for more than maybe like 20 or 30 minutes tops, if that.
Yeah, I
But I
mean
have like
I've
put on
Same.
like he's got like this like space one where you literally it's just you floating in space. It's nothing wild, but it feels very real. And I know
Mhm.
after like 15 minutes or so inside of that, I start feeling a little wonky, like, and I think that's because my brain is having trouble figuring out like where does this end, right? Because
Mhm.
you're like in space, and then
Yeah,
obviously I could
that's
feel my feet
probably.
on the floor, right? But you know, it might just be me. So, but I usually have to take it off after like 15 minutes of it. I'm just like, no, I'm gonna fall over. So,
You want to be sure not to move if your body if you have the ability to move the camera where you're panning around the different angles while your body's staying still, that
yeah,
will cause motion sickness quite quickly. You
yeah,
want to
that's
ideally you want to actually move the camera by moving your head physically. And so like and yeah, so anything like a racing game, I've tried playing Distance in VR before and it didn't go well. There are tricks to give you less nausea, and I am open to it, especially if headsets get better to getting my project in it. But yeah,
I mean, it sounds like it's gonna be a fun. I mean, you're not going crazy with like trying to create a whole world. You're sticking to a base idea, and then you'll build out from there. I like the idea
yeah,
of a
and
racing game.
it's got a neat mechanic too, which is it's a painter racer. So you
Oh
actually
yeah.
paint the track.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, as you're racing.
as you're racing, you're painting the track, and your paint acts as a boost for next lap.
Nice.
So you're making your own boost, and then people can paint over your boost. So there's this kind of trade-off. Do you paint in the optimal place to race where you're almost guaranteed to have someone run over yours if they're behind you? Or do you paint a little off to the side where your racing line is longer, but you're more likely to be able to have it next time around? And I think that's a really interesting like It's an interesting, like good
That is
games are
nice.
made of interesting decisions, and I think that is an interesting decision. Yeah, it should be hopefully fun.
I mean,
So
it
will they
sounds
be
cool.
will the painting your racing lines, will that be within like a designated area where you say like, hey, within this width you can play your track on, or is it kind of like just here's point A, here's point B, I don't fucking care how you get there, play in your own track to get there as you need to be.
When you say play in your own track, what do you mean by that?
Oh, sorry. So like in the former, there is a track already kind of like designated. Like maybe there's like floating buoys or something that kind of says like, hey, here's the limits of where, how far to the left, how far to the right you can kind of go. And we're also kind of guiding you through the city. But within that, you can set your racing line using the paint track. So on the next lap and on subsequent laps, you can have a better, more optimized like racing line as a result. And then the ladder would just kind of be like there is no restriction. It's kind of like how like Burnout Paradise was,
Oh, that was a fun
where
game.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah, where it had like it didn't really care how you got there. It just told you like you had point A, you had to get to point B. Here's the map. Figure out what your best route is.
No, it isn't. I started with that. And like the Burnout Paradise type thing, and I had where you were scoring people more on how they painted than when they got to the finish line. And the finish line was just like the biggest paint payload that would let
Gotcha.
you. It was a paint geyser. This is the old way of doing it. And if the idea was you're still incentivized to go fast because you want to get to the paint geyser first, which will get you lots of points. But the problem is that in testing, I found that that there are some problems with that. Is that you can have someone get in first, but not actually win, which is a little unsatisfying. Because
Yeah.
they didn't paint enough, and then the game kind of almost incentivized you to just make loop the loops. And the question is like, what if everybody decides to go slow and just start zigzagging the track? And then it's just not fun. There's no like go kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
So no, it's just a traditional track. The other problem with the Burnout Paradise model of like like kind of network based like points, it's a lot harder to make when it comes to performance because you have to put a lot more stuff in. You have to be more clever about how you're loading everything because
I
it's
can see
not
that. Yeah.
linear. With a track, at least it's linear, so you can put a bunch of cool stuff along the track. What I'm doing is I have off-roading. So you know how in Mario Kart, like if you go off the road, you don't hit a wall, but just get slowed down. You're in the
Mm-hmm.
dirt, and the dirt is like 70% the speed or whatever. Even 80% still makes you feel like you're going super slow.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I have. Like I've got some super rough screenshots on the game that like the shiny part is the part you can paint on, and then the off-road part is the part you cannot paint on the off-road part. And the hope there is that if you keep the road narrow enough, people will be painting over each other's paint, and certain items will let you go on other people's paint. So it's not like you're trying to do the same thing every single
Oh,
time.
gotcha.
And then in the very last, there's a special kind of boost that lets you eat your paint. And when you eat, so you want to save it for the last lap typically, but you don't have to. And you can consume your paint as you go and then go much faster. And then finally, there's one more kind of boost. This is the only other mechanic really that's in there so far called Nova. And Nova's inspired. Did you guys see Redline, the anime Redline?
Mm-hmm.
And that Nitra thing that like
Yeah.
it just go like ridiculously fast. You can only like use it maybe once, right? It's the same kind of concept. Is like you can use it any point in the race, but you can only use it once. And if you crash while you're using it, catastrophic explosion.
Oh,
It's like
I
if
love that.
yeah.
Colors
And so yeah,
everywhere.
so yeah, you have to be very careful about when you use it. It's sort of like the curse of the golden mushroom in Mario. It's like I'm not a great Mario Kart player, but I always trip up when I use that golden mushroom because it's boost boost boost, boost and I crashed.
Right.
It's kind of the same. Like it's a
That
push
was
your luck.
Yeah, that was always my favorite like risk reward system within the Burnout series because it did like it made you incentivize like, hey, the more dangerous you drive, the longer your boost can go. However, the longer your boost goes, the faster you go. And eventually it does feel like that scene in Redline where the world just starts to get like really
Stretchy.
narrow and really point. You're like, holy shit! Like I'm weaving through traffic. I'm gonna fucking crash at any point. And the minute you do, it's like you're immediately wiped out because you are going too fast. You're
Oh
not
Yeah.
man,
recovering from that at all.
when you
There's no winning after that.
when you use this boost, it's literally going to shatter the UI, and if you crash, other players' UI is going to shake. They go,
Oh,
well, like,
nice.
so
So people around
someone
you can
just
feel it.
yeah.
See, that's a cool idea. People around you can actually feel the residual effects of you screwing up.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a little over time, but that's okay. I
It's
definitely
been
would
very
like
fun.
to be a play tester on this but I don't. You mentioned you wanted people you don't know, so
I want both. I really want both
okay.
because the people who I do know are probably like going to give better feedback, especially if I know they're gamers. The plan is to actually do some like physical events in San Diego. So
Are you going to be there this year?
in where? Oh,
San Diego.
I live in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then yes, you will be there. Are you going to be at San
Yes,
Diego
I will.
Comic-Con testing at all?
I don't have anything lined up with San Diego Comic-Con.
Okay.
I'll probably still go. Oh boy, I just got an email about how they changed the whole pass system. I've got to get on that. But
I haven't seen that yet.
I just go as an attendee.
Okay.
I don't. I guess they do have a gaming section, and they probably could do
Right.
like a playtest thing. But no, I'm just planning to do like a. You know what's really funny is I was looking at marketing advice, and one person said that they had really good results by making a Tinder profile that was basically play test my game, and I will give you free pizza or like free pizza and beer. Just like come over and test my game for me, and like they actually had good results from that. I'm not sure if I'll go that route, but I found it amusing.
It could be
'Cause
that would be an interesting date.
Yeah.
it's really hard to find playtesters like within the indie game or the community of people who love games. Like there actually are server like Discord servers where like you have to play other people's games. You get points for playing their games, and you can cash those points in to have people test your game because it's so hard to get people to just willingly test your game. There's
Yeah, I mean
so
they
many
want some
options.
kind of I
Is
guess
it
they want
is it because
incentive.
people have a hard time reconciling the fact that it's like, hey, I'm playing this game, but it's early stages? Like I know like a lot of I know like a lot of developers say like, early access can be like a double-edged sword where it's like on one hand, like you said, like really good because you kind of get it out in front of people early and you can kind of see what bugs are, or it can give you like income coming in earlier. But the other hand of that is you get people that complain where it's like, oh, this thing's not finished. This thing's not finished. It's like, well, yeah, it's early access.
Well, right.
is
That
is
that
that
that,
is that
that
is that more or less the issue with finding playtesters, or is it something else that's driving it?
It's honestly, it's one of the things that's scary to me as someone who wants to like sell games right now is that it's time. Is that there's so many wonderful polished games out there that people could be playing instead. Why would they play a half-baked game? And
I
then on
got you.
top of that, if they have to take the time to give feedback, like there are people who like doing that, but only to a point. They might spend 5 or 10 minutes on it.
Sure.
You typically like this is why QA exists,
That's
in studios. You've got to pay people to test your
right.
game.
I was gonna say
And
I've got a friend who works at Sony. I could see if he can help you out, but he does QA stuff, and
mhm.
yes, you have to pay them to. That
Yeah, I'm
incentivizes
looking
them to
into
actually
that.
try the thing.
I know there are like overseas companies now that also do QA. But yeah, it's one of those things like, you look at how many indie games fail, and I think a lot of them is because they don't properly budget for things like QA because
Right.
it's not something you think about.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's kind of a cross that bridge when you get there thing. I actually have the Steam page. I have my LLC registered with Valve. I actually have all the tags and everything, but I've not pushed the release button yet because of what you were saying is like that first impression of like if it looks half baked. Like the
Right.
screenshots on my website, they don't at least to me they don't look great. I don't want that to be a lot of people are going to see that and go, "Oh, that's shovelware," and then never look at it again. And then when Steam promotes it, months down the line, that they'll go, oh, I saw that it was crap, and like not
Yeah.
look at it. And so but at the same time, and the flip side of that, there's story. If your community can see how something got better, then
Right.
that's an event. That's like, hey guys, like I improved this thing, like, look at how much better it is. That's newsworthy, And so there's a
Mhm.
balance. You want to go out of the gate with a strong enough start to show that like this is not a crap game, but with room to grow so that you can tell a story about the development. So
Yeah. I've heard like some people talk about how like visuals do go a long way towards like selling, the thing where it's like, oh, it looks pretty, but it's more important to make sure that I guess you have like, and this is just me talking as an outsider, like because I've never been on the development side of games in this regard, but I've heard people talk about how you really want to make sure you have like a minimum viable product for it. So at least like, yeah, the game may look rough around the edges,
well,
but it's
you guys get to
play
see it
it's
by
good. It's a fun game to play. So therefore, it's like okay, we can forgive it because we have this tiny
Right.
bit of content, but you can see the gold within that tiny bit of content as a result. Like what's
yeah.
there like works as the gameplay loop and everything.
And yeah, I am doing that with I'm just gonna release one track at first. And I actually have a fallback if that's easier to make. You guys ever play Hover on Windows 95? It's like a flag capture. It was a game that came with Windows 95.
Oh
Was
no,
that the
that
tank game?
They looked a little bit like tanks, sort of. They were like hovering, like they looked more like
no.
flying
Yeah.
saucers. And you had to capture the blue flags and like, I
I
always thought
think
of
I did. Yeah.
it's like a vehicular flag capture game, and it would be a lot easier to make. It's not my first choice of a game I'd want to make, but it's kind of a fallback. Like if like the demo doesn't go well or early access doesn't go well, and I'm scared of putting in like a bunch more time and resources into it, I might make that. Would be a way easier game to make. I might release that first because one
Mhm.
of the scariest things about what I'm doing is that all the marketing advice you get when it comes to indie games is that your first game almost never does well. I mean, sometimes it can, and you like it. It's a great story when it does well. But most
Right.
often it's your second game that actually
I
like
mean,
Right.
right.
gets
They
people.
say that about
And
Kickstarters too, right? They say your first Kickstarter never does well, and then your second
yeah,
one
and
does the
so
best.
in theory, I could start, and I could start with the flag capture game because it would use the same physics system, the same vehicle system. I would have a similar multiplayer system, using Steamworks integration and everything. I could recycle things, but it's still its own thing. And if it does well, it could be then a mini game for Chroma Circuit, where
Hmm.
you add the
Okay.
painting mechanic. That is something I am actively thinking about. It kind of depends on how I'm doing on budget and time. I have this big spreadsheet of every single feature in the game, art assets, programming assets, and like how much it's estimated to cost. And basically, until I get further into this project, because I haven't been on this super long yet, until I get further in, I'll have a graph of like what I expected and what it actually did, and how long it actually took. And time isn't even really that relevant either. It's like some developers can cost 3 times as much as others, but if they're 4 times as fast, you're actually,
Mhm.
you're still getting a better value. And so I am basically a lot of this is played by ear based on like what's the trajectory looking like, and it's an interesting it's definitely something I'm still learning, how to do. It's
Mhm.
basically being a producer,
Right.
and so
And
um,
you haven't considered Kickstarter at all?
I have only if it here's what I will do a Kickstarter is if in the demo I see that spark in people, and like we know, and like my collaborator Stevenson. So Stevenson is like my right hand man on this project, and he's really good at reading the spark, or like whether people are having genuine fun in something or they're just being polite. He's really good
Mhm.
at seeing that. And so if I have him looking at it where it's like we really know this is good, but then we put it on early access in Steam and we're barely getting any wish lists, then I will do a Kickstarter, because the Kickstarter is basically a publicity thing, and that will probably help drive people to it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that like Steam does promote you. If you have something that looks good, they will put you that little pop-up that shows up when you go on Steam, that little box.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can get on that box, I think that would probably be enough for me, where I wouldn't need Kickstarter. But yeah, no, it's on the table if I think that it's just basically a marketing problem and not like a game problem.
Sure.
So
I am shocked to see. I expected you to have thousands of people following you on Twitter, man. You're
I
super
I
popular.
I'm not.
I guess you don't post on there enough or something. I
I
don't
don't
know.
post.
Okay.
I've been really bad about social media. I didn't really like, and the problem is like some of the like the marketing experts and stuff say that Twitter is not a big deal for indie games.
It's
You'd think
not.
it would be, but it like they've talked about events where like thousands of people saw it and like 15 people maybe bought the game or even
Right.
subscribed it. Like many like double digit thousands. And so it's like, I just don't it social media just takes a lot out of me. I don't
It takes a lot out of everybody, man.
uh yeah, I post like boy, I've kind of stopped using Facebook. I occasionally use it for like, I don't like to post about my personal life on there, and it seems like
Sure.
that kind of help. If I did that, it would help pad things out. You're supposed to post like every day, and I
Yeah.
look like I'm a robot. I look like I have no personality on social media. It's like I post, here's a new thing I made, here's some new book I got into,
I
where
mean,
it looks like I'm just
that's what Eli told me. Like, I was talking to Eli about this, and he posts just a piece of artwork and a link to his website. That's it. Like, there's no like, what's up, guys? How's it going? Nothing. It's
is he
literally
doing
like
well at
art.
it?
Yeah, I mean, his Twitter account has gone up, and then I started doing that on Twitter, but then on Instagram, somebody said post a little more information because people actually read what's under the image. So when I posted images there, I post like, this is part of the next book. Here's some information about this character. And like, I've been on Instagram forever, and I just broke 5K, and it's like, whatever. But there was
Yeah,
a
I'm
time
kind
where I
of
was
at
like
the same.
struggling to get there, right? But now I'm just like, oh, great. I mean, I posted in a group, Andrew and I was like, hey, I hit 5K. And everyone's like, yay, congrats. I'm like, yeah, man, it only took me like 8 years, like, or whatever,
Yeah, I
So I
never
don't
thought
think
that it
that
was
stuff's
that.
as important. I think it does help a little bit to get your stuff out there, but it depends on what you're trying to do. In your case, you're trying to make a game, but the
What I've been
artwork and stuff for the
focusing
game, I
on,
feel like might be important.
I've been just focusing on Discord.
Yeah, I mean,
Past couple
Discord's
years.
fine. You've got a
I
great
mean,
Discord server. I'm in there.
oh yeah, it's for anyone who goes to like zernworks.com/chroma circuit, which is the game landing page. There is a link to Discord. And I really, it feels more like a community. It doesn't feel like you're shouting
Yeah,
into a void. It's not as distracting to me. It's definitely smaller. I think it's like 165 people in there. So
I
compared
mean, that's
to
a
normal.
lot. I mean, but like everybody in there is kind of like focused on the same stuff, which I think is
People are
important.
active, and like it,
Yeah.
what I like about it is it's gotten to the point what I would call critical mass, where it can keep itself alive. I don't
Yep.
have to post every day, because when just for like a year kind of, I was posting new content in there like every day. And
Right.
I should, in hindsight, I should have taken everything I posted into Discord and just mirrored it to Twitter, and then I would have had that presence, but you know the- I didn't. So
It's not
you're,
I didn't mean for it to sound like, yeah, you fucked up.
Twitter.
It's not a
Well,
make or break thing, right? It's like,
yeah.
I feel like it just helps a little. Like in my head, I always thought having a big Twitter presence would help me push the new workout. It really doesn't. Like I posted artwork, and I get like maybe like a couple hits on it, and then I post like a list of things you should do, and I get like 15,000 hits on it. I'm like, really? This is just a list of garbage. Like, this is not even the artwork, like, so it's like boggles my mind how any of this stuff works sometimes.
well,
So
it's like it's sort
Yeah.
of like preaching to the choir, or it almost I don't know. I feel like the art community, it feels a little bit like a pyramid scheme, in the sense that like, like selling how to do it or selling the dream of it can be more rewarding in terms of engagement or money or whatever it is than actually
yeah,
doing it. Like
that is a
I've
good way
seen
of looking at it. Like, people want to know the secret, but they don't want to see
Yeah.
the actual
they
product.
want to know how to get in. They want to know how they're following you because they want to be you. And so when you give them tips on how to be more like you, they engage more, versus just, just
Right.
actually doing that work for the clients or whatever it is. It's I've seen that happen with people who like, will make an online course and make more money than like doing work for like top tier clients.
Right.
And so, it's that it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I don't even fight it. I'm just like, here it is. Like, it's there,
Give
But
them what they want.
I just throw it at them, and I literally follow Eli's process because for now it seems to be working. I'm not gonna fight it. Both of us, him and I, are like, it works. We don't know why, but we're a little over time, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But I really actually enjoyed this because I learned a bunch of stuff I didn't know about 3D on top of indie games. Indie games is something I've had in the back of my head because people always see my work and they're like, hey, you're gonna make this into a like a retro game or something, and I was like, that'd be cool.
It does have that look.
I have no idea how to do it, but I'm sure you and I will talk more, and I'll learn a bunch from you guys. But I'd definitely like to have you back on someday as you develop this further, because I think it'd be very interesting to talk about
totally
new stuff you come up with and new stuff you learned.
Yeah, it's still very early stage, so I'm sure it
fine.
will have changed by that time, and I will look back on it and I will.
She's gonna be like, I'm making a fighting game, guys, and this is where we're gonna go. I will definitely be at San Diego Comic-Con. As far as I know, we have our booth there still, so if you're there, we could definitely hang out.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that'd be great. I also plan to be at Gen Con this year, again, more for the playtest hall.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
Cooking up with Stevenson, just working with the video game. We're working on some board game stuff to playtest there. So
I'm gonna have to check that out too.
See you.
Okay, so this board games, we should definitely talk about board games next time too, because board games is something.
That's another hour or so.
Yeah. So thanks for everyone who's watching. Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan came in with like a bunch of people, so we had a lot of chatter.
Oh wow, yeah, I haven't been following the Twitch chat. Oops.
It's okay. It's like usually I have a moderator keeping track of stuff for me too, but it's now it's just Andrew and me. So
hi. I know this Jonathan. Hi.
Yeah, he said you do VR talks with him all the time, or used to it at some point. Our next guest is so Sunday is probably not happening, but our March 4th, I think, is our next guest. It's gonna be Scott Fisher. So if you guys want to tune in for that and watch him, this is probably the only time I can get him because Smart School starts a week after that, and then no one can touch this man for the next 14 weeks, basically. So
yeah, I can imagine.
I think it'll be a fun show if anybody wants to tune in for that. I will post about that. But Kirsten, thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hang on just 1 second while I take us all offline here. And again, Jonathan, thank you, man. I appreciate you bringing all these people in. It's Friday night, super hard to get people on. So